Hello, hello, hello. My name is Max Rich, and we are here today to talk about Prince. I'm going to give a couple minutes for everyone to sort of get into the into this little room here and get acclimated. If there's anybody who's already here and who's watching and listening, can you just go ahead and comment and let me know that sound is working and video feed is working and everything? It is on my end, so I just want to make sure that you guys can all see what's happening as well as hear what's happening, because there's a lot of info coming up. So where you can type questions and all the rest of it, go ahead and if there's anybody there who's just listening and watching, let me know that you can understand what I'm saying. That's kind of key to all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of keep refreshing the questions page so that I can kind of keep up to date with you guys and make sure that if there's any questions or anything that pop up while I'm teaching, that I'm on top of it, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. So we're going to get going in just a minute or two. Just go ahead and give me a little shout out. Let me know you can hear me, and we'll get started in a minute. All right, so okay, so we are talking about Prince, and maybe a bit more than just Prince in general. I want to talk about the style of music or the style of guitar that he is kind of known for pioneering. It's this really unique mixture of funk and rock, and a few guys before Prince kind of sort of hinted at it. A few bands, Hendrix being sort of like the earliest of them, but also Parliament Funkadelic. They kind of blended this rock funk genre thing. So if you are in any way familiar with funk music, then you probably have a good understanding of what I'm talking about. P-Funk and the rest of it. Bootsy Collins, bass player. But most I know a lot of my students, and myself included, come from a rock background. So if you have sort of a background in rock, or you're familiar with rock, then blending these two should kind of be a bit seamless, especially if you have been exposed to funk. I kind of want to just talk about a few really simplistic funk ideas before we dive into any Prince stuff at all. And when you think of funk, you think of I think of like the pioneer of funk, James Brown. And one of the most common chords in funk music is a dominant 9 chord. So let's say, just for now, we're in the key of G, right? Right there. We're going to go ahead and go up to this key, or this G right here on the 10th fret. And what we're going to do, we're going to play the 10th fret 5th string with our middle finger, and then play the 9th fret 4th string with our 1st finger. And then we're going to bar our ring finger across the 10th fret there. So we get 10, 9, 10, 10, 10. Looks like that. So we've got like that. And that's kind of like, I want to say, the basis for so much music, so much funk music. You think like, right? That's James Brown right there. I'll just show you that. That's kind of, a preamble to what we're going to talk about. But and what I'm doing basically is playing a G dominant 9, which functions just like a G7 chord, so a G dominant chord. But I'm adding the 13th of the chord, which is this high E right here on the 1st string. Right, like that. And it's a really common thing. You hear it all the time, and you can blend it in all different, or you can use it in a bunch of different ways. You hear it in blues. Right, that type of thing. But like I said, you also hear it in funk. That type of thing as well. So this G dominant 9 is a really common and useful chord. And it happens a lot in the song Kiss by Prince, right? And that's the first thing I want to talk about. That's like, you know, kind of the most, at least when I think of Prince, I think of Purple Rain and Kiss. Those are like the two. And when I play gigs, R&B and funk gigs, those are the two that always get called. You know, I go to a session or whatever, and they'll be like, you know Prince? And I'm like, yeah, of course, you know, and they always ask for Purple Rain or Kiss. And Kiss starts with a similar chord shape. It's actually an identical chord shape, but it's on a different set of strings and a different set of frets. So the chord sounds like this. Kiss, right? But what we're doing, we're taking that exact same shape that we just did on the G9, except now we're sliding up to the 12th fret with our middle finger, and then 11th, and that's on the 4th string, I should say. And then 11th fret with our first finger, and then we're barring the top two with our ring finger. So we have kind of like 12, 11, 12, 12. And, you know, I don't want to get like too wildly in depth with the theory behind, you know, chords and chordal theory and stuff. I've done a bunch of lessons on that. So if you feel like checking it out, head over to Totally Electric Guitars and check out some of those videos on chord theory and stuff, so you can get a little more sophisticated introduction to what these chords are and how they're used. But generally speaking, this functions as like an E sus dominant chord, dominant sus chord. And a dominant chord resolves down a fifth. So an E chord will resolve down to an A chord, which is the key of the song. Kiss, the song is in A minor. And this E kind of uses the dominant nature to resolve to an A minor. So that Kiss, that the way it starts, right? That's kind of like the main groove, the main feel. And if you have like an octave pedal, which I do, and I like to use pretty often, you can really get a good feel for how that sounds. It sounds kind of like the song. If you go right there. And then the main groove of the song is basically just based around A. And there's not a whole lot of guitar that's happening in the verse of the song. In the chorus, you can use that original dominant 9 chord shape I did here, but we're using only 2 chords, an E9 and a D9. And those are the chords for the chorus. So like the verse happens over an A chord. Right, that type of thing. And it's maybe a bit more A dominant than just than A minor. So if you're feeling like so inclined, you can think about it in your A pentatonic box. But make sure that the C note, so A, C, like this note, you can kind of slide into a C sharp and do that type of a thing, you know, because the C to C sharp, the minor third to major third, is a really common thing to use in like over a dominant chord, and something Prince does all the time. So although there's not a lot of guitar that's happening in the verse, you can still kind of play around with it, you know, like if I were to loop this groove, you know, this kind of right there. And the main thing I want to get across to you is that when you're playing this type of music, and you're playing Prince, you have to think really, really rhythmically. It's not always about crazy vocabulary on the guitar and like how many licks you can pull out and how many different kinds of tricks you can do. It's a lot more about rhythm and placement. For example, you know, just over this bass line, you could take like a simple A minor. That type of thing, and you can feel the groove like right away. And all I was doing there was barring on the 5th fret and then adding this F sharp with my ring finger on the 2nd string, and then sometimes my pinky on the same string. So you get, and it's all about thinking rhythmically. And when you're playing, whether in a live group or like with a backing track or however you're playing, if you're playing with some other type of instruments and there's a drum or there's a drummer involved, pay a lot of attention to his right hand and the hi-hat or the ride, depending on what cymbal he's using. But generally speaking, the hi-hat, because the hi-hat is going to give you a lot of clues into the subdivision of the beat, because the main beat sounds like that, right? But within that, you have all kinds of subdivision. I can't do it that fast with my voice. But all those little subdivisions are possible funky placements for some chords, and maybe just one chord. Right? Something like that. So when you're thinking about this, it's really important when you're playing, and generally speaking in pretty much whatever genre you're playing, to hear the subdivisions in your head. So if this is my, you know what, I've lost the bass groove. Let me play it one more time. Here we go. Okay, right there. So you can hear that bass groove. Right? That would be the hi-hat. And so I encourage you to take something like that and just play with the groove, you know? And right there, you know, you have automatically some type of really good pocket. And that's kind of what Prince does all the time. So that can sort of take care of the verse. I mean, like I said, if you're trying to play exactly what's on the album, there's not really much guitar at all during the verse. But then during the chorus, you have 2 chords. You've got this E9. And then what are the words? Oh, extra love in your kiss, boom, 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 and then back to the verse, right? So the chorus just kind of bounces between you don't. Right there. And that's basically the majority of what happens during Kiss. There is a little bridge. We'll talk about it in a second. But if anybody has any questions, I'm not going to wait until the very end to like answer everyone's questions. If you have questions, chime in. Like I said, I'm going to have to keep refreshing this extra page here so I can see all your guys' questions. But let me know if you have any comments or questions or anything that you need help with, or you don't understand something. You know, I'm going to take my time and read through this stuff. Let's see. All right, cool. So it looks like everyone has a connection of some type, which is good. Yeah, so no questions as of yet, but if you do, like I said, feel free, chime in, and I will get to them. I'll be checking the questions periodically and make sure that I help you out with any questions you have. So now onto the bridge, right? You have this kind of, it breaks down from that main groove, and then it does kind of like a drum beat with just guitar. And this is really similar to what I was playing in the verse as far as note choice. One thing I want to say about Prince is that he's not your typical rock player in that he doesn't stick to exactly like triad or seventh chords. He kind of uses extensions. And what I mean by that is, I'll kind of break down a little bit what I'm talking about. An A minor 7 chord. Let's start there. Hopefully you guys know what an A minor 7 chord is. It's basically A, C, E, and G, all played at the same time. Right there. So it's basically like all the notes of the A pentatonic scale except for the D. Right there. Now the cool thing about funk is that you can add, and not just funk, but a lot of different types of music, especially when there's seventh chords involved, you can add the major sixth of the chord, which in this case, if we're in A, the major sixth would be F sharp, which conveniently, if you think about it, if I were to just like play my 5th fret A minor scale and like bar it, but I would just play the 5th fret, I would basically have like an A minor 11 chord because there's a D right here. And if I play a D9, I have pretty much almost all the exact same notes, except this one here. My first finger is now on F sharp instead of where it was on G. But other than that, a D9 and A minor 11 are pretty much like the exact same thing other than that one note. So if you're able to include that one F sharp note in your playing over an A7, it's going to add a lot of color and a lot of flavor, which is exactly what's happening here. He starts with this kind of, it's like almost an octave idea on the 12th fret where he's playing the G, 12th fret, and then C, 13th fret, and then G, 15th fret. So I'm playing just G, C, G on the top 3 strings. But if you think about it, the bass note is A, so you're basically playing like this much of your pentatonic scale, right there, with the bass note. And if I'm playing that, and then I drop that high G down to an F sharp, I end up with that kind of extra color. Right? Like that. And that can give you like a lot of use as far as funk playing. And I don't want you to just take this and say, okay, now I know this riff and that's how you play Kiss. You should try to like kind of instill this somehow into your own playing so that when you're playing a groove over like an A dominant chord, even if it's an entirely different feel, you can use that F sharp, you know? For example, if you're like, right? What I did there, I don't even know what I did there actually. I'm playing with this F sharp and hinting at that G. It's a very bluesy thing to do. Right there. You can also, you know, do a lot of different things if you just kind of include the major sixth in your playing, which is what's happening here. Right there. And that's generally, that's pretty much, you know, the main, pretty much everything there is to know about the song Kiss, you know? As far as like pentatonic, like lead type stuff, we'll get into that a bit later. But once again, just gonna refresh the feed here. So if people have questions, hurl them at me and I will hopefully hurl back some answers for you. Let's see here. Okay, so which pickup am I using? Very, very good question, because I'm sure, as you guys have probably noticed, when you're watching funk, or you're listening to funk, a lot of guys play a Strat, single coil. single coil pickups offer a narrower pickup field. So rather than a humbucker that has like a wide range of magnetism to pick up off the string, this is much smaller, and so it picks up, dare I say, maybe a bit more accurate sound, and definitely not as powerful as a humbucker, but crispier and snappier. And with this Strat, I have 5 pickup positions, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one being all the way at the neck, that one being all the way at the bridge. And the sound is very different. Here, I'll check it out. That's really super bright, and it's great for like kind of shreddy, fast lead stuff, which we'll get into. And then this one, the neck pickup, is much more kind of juicy. Right? Has a lot more kind of thick low end and warmth. Right? So you can get a lot of different sounds. And then the middle one, of course, has like kind of an in between those two. Right? That type of thing. And the position 2 and position 4, these blend the 2 pickups. So position 2 will blend these 2, and position 4 will blend these 2. And generally, I find when it comes down to kind of funkier, snappier, and a tighter sound, you know, it's all about if in funk, if you can get a tight, crispy sound, then you're doing your job right. And I find that position 2 blending these 2 pickups works really, really well. So, you know, instead of this where I'm on my neck pickup, there's a lot of sound. There's a lot because it's just all coming straight from here. Whereas if I pop it down just to position 2, now I'm blending these 2, and take a listen. As opposed to, I find that for chordal stuff and really snappy funk stuff, blending these 2 or these 2 work really well. I mean, if you're going to use a wah, you might want to blend these 2 because the high end will kind of overpower it if you're using these 2. It's all about experimentation. You know, my gear is like almost certainly different than your gear. So you want to make sure that you can kind of get the most mileage out of whatever gear you have. And if you have a Strat, I totally recommend experimenting with different pickup selections and different riffs, you know, because like I was saying, if I'm doing something like, you know, that type of a sound, I'm definitely going to be using the neck pickup because it gives a fat, juicy warmth thing. But if I'm going to be like kind of wailing, you know, that type of a thing, I'm going to be using the bridge pickup because that's going to give a lot of bite and a lot of high end. So very good question, because getting the tone right is like a huge percentage of playing Prince. And when you're playing like Prince's, I want to say like shreddier stuff, you know, the stuff that's really like bam in your face, that's when it's time to hit the bridge pickup. So if we're talking about let's say like When Doves Cry, right? This is a good one, right? Right? That's a cool lick, and I really like that one. What I suggest is you pop it on the bridge pickup and put on like just super raging overdrive maximum gain distortion, right? Prince was a tone fiend, and you know, he really like sometimes oversaturated his tone to the point where it was like wildly distorted. And that's exactly what's happening here. Me personally, right now, I'm using a combination of 2 pedals. I'm using a Providence Red Rock Overdrive, which sounds like this just by itself. And then I'm also using an Ibanez Tube Screamer, which sounds like this. Right? That one's maybe a little bit too loud. But if you blend the two, all of a sudden you get some serious tone. And you can get that like really intense Prince sound, which is exactly what we're going to talk about. All right, so that lick right there is like that. And so what we're doing, we're once again shifting gears into When Doves Cry. So actually, before I get too deep involved, I get a little carried away with myself sometimes. I want to make sure that everyone's up to speed on this and no one's like falling behind. So bear with me a second. Cool. No questions as of yet. So moving on. When Doves Cry. What we have. Okay, so it's in like an A minor shape like this, but we're using like our 12th fret, sort of a pentatonic box, but not really. It's like a variation. If you think about it, very often, if you're playing an A minor, you notice that soloing in your E minor pentatonic box works. And part of the reason is because this A minor chord fits really nicely within that box. Right? And that's exactly what's happening here. And so that's how it starts. And so we're starting on B on the second string, and then we're playing B, D, C, B. Right there. That's how it starts, right? So one more time, that's 12, 15, 13. Hold on, sorry. I'm getting myself lost. There we go. That's the riff. Right there. Okay, so it's 12, 15, 13, 12, 14 on the low string, and then a hammer on. And then we kind of climb down. And we just kind of descend our pentatonic scale. Right there, one more time. And then we end here on the 5th string, 14th fret, and then we slide. We take our pinky on the same fret, but on the 1st string, and we go slide up and right back. So with some distortion, that sounds like this. Right there, one more time. Right, and all that's required then is a little more distortion and some speed. So once again, that's the main lick. And the picking, as far as the right hand is concerned, down, up, and then that's the hammer on and pull off. And then down, pull off, up, pull off, down. And then an upstroke on that high note. Right there. So once again, I'm going to just double check, make sure I don't want to leave anybody behind. So bear with me because it's, you know, questions may be abounding. But anyway, so that is kind of the beginning of Doves Cry, right? So you once again throw on some distortion. And then it gets into that, which is a technique that Prince does really pretty often. When Prince wants to get really kind of crazy on the guitar, he does a lot of tremolo picking. And tremolo picking, otherwise known as speed picking, is really common. where you're just rapid fire, maybe on 1 or 2 different sets of strings, and you can really kind of create some cool ideas. So what's happening in the next part, he's kind of shredding around a few notes, and it's an open B string, and he plays, I'll give you a breakdown of, generally speaking, what the notes are. E, 5th fret, F sharp, 7th fret, A, 10th fret, and then he kind of does that thing, right? So you're kind of in your A pentatonic box, but once again, using that F sharp. And you can kind of play with these notes. That type of an idea. All the while using that tremolo picking idea. And in order to execute tremolo picking really easily so that you can... The motion should come pretty much exclusively from your wrist. You know, I see a lot of players like using their arm like this, like that's definitely the wrong way to do it. You're gonna like hurt your shoulder, your elbow or something. The idea is instead of holding your pick, I'm gonna see if you can kind of see this on the camera. Instead of holding your pick straight like this, you wanna hold it at an angle so that when you're playing through the string, you're not like fighting through it at like a 90-degree flat angle, but rather maybe tilt the pick so that it's slicing through at like a 45-degree angle, because that's going to reduce the friction and allow you to kind of really tremolo pick a lot faster. So if you notice, when I'm playing and I'm doing my tremolo picking, a lot of times when I'm playing and I'm playing funk or something else, I play with my thumb like this. And then when it's time to really speed up, I bend my knuckle like that so that my pick, instead of being in this position where it's kind of like flat against, see if you can kind of see that, where it's flat against the string, when I bend my thumb, it bends the pick at a 45-degree angle so I can slice through a lot easier. And that's a really common technique that a huge amount of like shred players really use, and they use it for sweeping and all different kinds of stuff. You know, this like, you know, type of an idea. You know? See that bent thumb? It's not like that. It's a bent thumb like that. And that's kind of the trick to tremolo picking. And it's important when you're practicing this to go slowly and evenly. You don't want, you know, where it's some notes are popping and others are quiet and some notes are dead and others aren't. You want like as even of a sound as you possibly can get. And so once you have that comfortably under your fingers, just try experimenting with those notes that I told you. So what I mean is just do. And you can really get like some really intense sounds. And once again, this is a technique. This is not like just a lick, right? So if you want to use this technique, I totally suggest you do so. And a really good way to practice your accuracy as far as tremolo picking goes, before I show you this lick, or like generally speaking, because it's not a lick that he plays the same way every time. It just happened to be that way on one recording of it. But a good way to practice your tremolo picking is to take 4 notes in a row. So let's take E, 5th string, I'm sorry, 5th fret, 2nd string, and just each note half steps above that. Right there. And that's the way to practice tremolo picking. So you start really slowly. And maybe it's a little harder on the 2nd string, so if you want to do the 1st string, you could do that too. It's just fine. right there. And then make sure to also go in reverse. Right there. And that way, when you actually do go and set about playing some lick while you're tremolo picking, your left and right hands are gonna be in sync rather than one hand going faster and one hand going slightly slower and creating this sort of like not so awesome out of time thing. Which coincidentally is sort of what happens in When Doves Cry. He doesn't play it like boom, solidly, like nails it right in time. There's a little bit out of time feel, which gives it that really cool raw, you know, rock and roll feel, because it's not, you know, like so, like I was talking about subdivision earlier. It's not precise and mechanical. It's a bit more raw and very emotional feeling. You could feel like how intense he was when he was playing it. And so what's happening basically on that one, you're going like you're kind of so the main thing is this. That's kind of how it starts. So you're playing tremolo. So right there, you're tremolo picking the B string. So I'm not even gonna talk about the B string because that's just kind of assumed. The notes are 7th fret, 10th fret, and then hammer on 5, 6, 7, and then D on the lower string on the G, on the G string. Yeah, so right there. And then it's all real fast. And what's happening after that, he hits an open E string, and then he plays with this, that kind of a thing, where he's playing a hammer-on and pull-off from the 5th fret 2nd string, and doing the same thing on the G string. You know? And it's all about kind of varying that idea. It's not about like playing it note for note, because if you gave him, well, he's not around anymore, unfortunately, but a month ago, 2 months ago, you gave him a guitar, he would not be able to play exactly note for note, rhythm for rhythm, what's on the record, because it was just sort of an improvisation. You can hear that it was improvised. So the key to this, rather than thinking about this note for note, is getting the general bits of it. So the end of it, that part, that's the main bit, because that's where it's ending, right? So what we're doing, same riff on both, and then hammer on, pull off to open string, and then 3rd string, 7, 5, open, 4, which coincidentally is the B, the same note that you were tremolo picking. So you put all that together, and it sounds like this. But you gotta make sure to have that raging distortion happening, because that's kind of the whole trick to it all. So once again, I'm gonna stop where I am in my tracks and make sure that everyone is up to speed with the questions, or if anyone has any questions. Let's see here. You actually, someone, Robert, yes, you got to your computer late. Don't worry, you'll be able to view this whole thing from the beginning. Later on, it's being recorded, so don't worry about it. You'll be able to get the beginning later. So now, I kind of want to talk about sort of a bit more broad idea of funk and rhythm and lead playing, you know, all kind of combined, because Prince did all of it, and he did really, really, really well. And so if you take a song like 1999, there's a lot of stuff happening, even though it sounds very simple. You've got this like just with one simple groove like that, you can create a whole huge amount of music. So what I'm going to do, I got to get rid of that old loop because I'm going to use my loop pedal. But before I do that, I want to show you the main idea of what's happening. Okay, so what we're doing, the top portion, we're switching between a D minor and a G minor. So basically, ring finger, 3rd string, 7th fret, 7, 6, 5, and then the next chord is 7, 8, 6, right there. So you go from D minor to playing a C in the bass, which makes it a little more difficult. Now this is, I want to say, like the condensed version. This isn't what a full band would play. I mean, when Prince was on stage, he had like, I don't know, like 9 musicians with him or something like this. This is for you by yourself as a guitar player if you got a looper pedal or something, right? Because otherwise, that C is almost unnecessary. You can just get away with it. Aha. There we go. Right? So, but if you're trying to do this whole thing like I am right here, okay, so what we're doing, we're keeping the C with our pinky down here, and we're shifting the chord while the C is ringing. You can't really let it go. And if you want to play here, the C here, it's going to be a lot more difficult, right? Yeah, I can't even do that. Right, like that. So if you kind of loop that, you can get this. You can get this sound. Right there. So what I did, I basically played a rhythm. And what I'm doing, I do this stuff a lot. I don't know if you guys have Instagram, but if you do, follow me, Max Rich Guitar on Instagram. You'll see a lot more of this type of stuff, this like looper type stuff. And what I'm doing is I kind of am just muting the strings and mimicking like a very rudimentary drum kit. I'm using the low string as kind of my bass drum. And then the high strings, all dead notes, so there's not really any note to it. It's just like a sound. That's mimicking my snare. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? The 2 and 4 are the snare hits. If you imagine bump, bump, ch, doom, 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 ch, doom, 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 ch, doom, 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 ch. Right? That's the exact same idea. So if I get rid of that loop and I just start with the rhythm, right there. And there you go. Okay, so there's 2 ways of playing that little chord progression. Actually, 3 ways. You could play this. But then later on in the chorus, he plays like a slightly different rhythm and a slightly different chord shape. And this, he starts with the same chord here, but then instead of playing the G minor this way, he plays it this way. So now he's playing, outlining like a G minor 7, and this is a really, really common chord shape. So the first finger after this D minor moves up to the 6th fret, and then you've got 8th fret middle finger, 10th fret pinky. And so what you have is F, the minor 7, G, the root, B, the minor 3rd. So you've got all the main ingredients for a G minor 7 chord. Whereas here, you've got a D minor 7. So if I put that with my loop now, right there. And so when you're playing, I just got rid of accidentally got rid of the loop I just played. But nonetheless, the main idea is to get that happening. And you could do it also up here. And if you do it up here, you can get a bit funkier. So I'm just playing a D minor right there, and I'm only playing the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings in my D minor boss. Right there. And then I just add my middle finger to the 2nd string 11th fret for that 2nd chord. Right there. So let's loop that now. Right there. And now we can add in the bass. All right, so what I'm doing, the bass in all of this is playing an F. If you listen, okay, so what's happening, I'm playing a variation of that. It's basically just kind of grooving on an F, and it's an F minor sound. So you can kind of do that where you play F, E flat, and then open D, and then C, and then back to your F. So before I get too involved, once again, got to make sure everyone's up to speed. So I got to keep stopping, but I don't want to leave anybody behind. Cool. So right, that's the kind of feel that you're after. Right there. And on top of that, you can kind of lay down a guitar riff as well. So let me loop that. right there. Right there. And the idea with this funk thing, remember I talked about in the beginning about thinking subdivision? Listen to the subdivision. Right? So if you play with this, that kind of, I want to say like F minor sound. That kind of a thing. You can really get some cool bouncy feel back and forth, and you can end up jamming on the song forever by yourself. The only other part that you really kind of need is the chorus, which is super simple. Right? And that's mainly it. It's a B flat major chord to a D minor chord. And then back and forth, bouncing between those two. And that's really kind of like the main gist of what's happening in this song. As far as like, I mean, we could continue all day talking about Prince and technique and tone, and I mean, I could do this for another 10 hours. You know, I'm sure you guys probably could too, because there's so much music to cover, from Purple Rain to a bunch of others. I'll actually, really quick, just for fun, because I know probably some of you out there are like, oh, please, Purple Rain, you know. Real quick, the chords: B minor sus2, G minor 7, F, E flat sus2, maybe a little phaser, right there. All that. The cool thing for you guys, since you're already viewing this, is that we're coming out with a DVD all about Prince. We're going to cover Purple Rain. We're going to cover a bunch of different things. Raspberry Beret, like seriously, a bunch of them. And we're going to kind of go in depth into like the different solos and basically a hugely expanded version of what you just saw. So we're going to talk about way more in depth as far as tone and technique is concerned, because Prince has a huge broad spectrum of technique. But in addition to that, what I want you guys to kind of get, I'm going to show you right now, is this, 1 second here. There we go. Let me find it. Here we go. Okay. With the Prince Reveal DVD, you're going to basically get a whole slew of riffs and licks and techniques from Prince. And in order to kind of go in depth, we're going to take a really big, we're going to dive sort of, I guess, headfirst into Purple Rain, into several others. Like I said, including Raspberry Beret. We're also going to do, we're going to be doing 1999, When Doves Cry. We're going to do, Little Red Corvette, you know, Let's Go Crazy. There's a bunch of Prince songs that have sort of iconic guitar moments that he's played. And it's really, like, I want to say challenging in the sense that in the sense that, you know, mimicking somebody like Prince is, you know, it's really kind of like trying to say, okay, well, I'm gonna write, you know, a 600-page novel right now. You know, there's so much material, so I kind of picked a few of the songs that highlight his best guitar work, from lead to really soulful R&B rhythm stuff, to kind of like funky, snappy guitar twangy sounds, you know? So you're gonna kind of get a broad spectrum look at a few of his greatest guitar pieces, as far as I'm concerned anyway. Everyone has their own different favorites, but some of those, I guess, are really iconic. You know, Purple Rain, you can't really mess with. Little Red Corvette, same thing. You know, those are all like things that you really want. And we're also going to talk in depth about his solos and go note for note over several of his solos and several of his solo licks, so that when you're listening to the album, you say, oh, hey, here's a solo for Little Red Corvette. Boom, I got it, no problem. And basically, if you're one of the first 100 people, and since you guys are like kind of got the inside scoop here, you guys have been paying attention, you can get this at a discounted rate, but only for the first 100. So if you're really into it, I suggest you go to www.playguitarlikeprince.com/PrinceDVD and pick it up now. I really would suggest that, because they're going to go fast. I'm actually watching them sort of like go from 100 down to 99, 98 right now. I got the little counter going out. So make sure you head on over there and get it for a little discounted rate. But also, in addition to that, you're going to get some backing tracks that you can actually play this stuff with. So if you want to say, oh, I want to play that lick, you know, this... if you want to play that lick, well, you're going to have the backing track to play it over. And that's, for me, that's kind of like a very key feature for pretty much anybody. So if you want, I would suggest once again to go to playguitarlikeprince.com/PrinceDVD and check it out. Get it for your discounted rate right now, because they're flying off the shelves pretty quick. And also head on over to TotallyElectricGuitars.com. Check out some of our other lessons. If I mentioned some chord names or something in the lesson today that you were unaware of, make sure you check out some of our other lessons, because all that stuff is explained on the website, TotallyElectricGuitars.com. And last little bit, if you got any final questions, now's the time to ask, because we are just about winding down. So we've only got a minute or so left. If anybody wants to ask any last little bit, I don't want to leave anybody behind, so go ahead and ask it now. But if you guys are all set, then I suggest heading over to playguitarlikeprince.com/PrinceDVD and get Prince Revealed, because you're going to get access to a whole slew of guitar music and solos and riffs and all the rest of it by the master himself. So I want to thank you guys very much for joining me today and listening to the lesson and all the little things I had to say. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you guys are going to be shredding on some Prince stuff soon. Get your tremolo picking up. Make sure that you got the tone and the feel for that funk rock combination, and listen to a lot of Prince. There's that's really I want to say the best musical medicine one can have when in these tough times of missing an artist like him. So enjoy yourselves and get Prince Revealed today.